And that got me thinking, that one of the few players who I did have an understanding of their game before the tournament was Andrey Santos of Brazil. And, just in terms of, if there are any Chelsea fans listening who maybe haven't had a good idea of what the one of their newest players, because God, don't we know that they've signed a few, one of their newest players is all about. He was Brazil's under-20 captain. I mean, even if you've just seen highlights of this tournament, you can see how much of a level above he is to his age mates and his peers. And you can see why Chelsea have partnered with effectively 10, 11 million pounds potentially rising. I think you could best describe him as like a box-to-box thruster. He's dynamic, he's all action, but he also pops up with goals evidenced by this tournament with the 6 goals that he found. He's everything that you'd want in a two-way midfielder, I think. He's got good passing, he's an aggressive defender. He's functional, but without being flashy either. And I think that's important, especially for a young player coming from South America. There seems to be a lot of polish to his game already. Now, there might be a caveat in terms of how well does he adapt from the Brazil's Serie B, where he was with Vasco da Gama previously, how well he adapts to the increasingly structured European style of football. But I think the experience that he's got already of a full season as a Vasco da Gama player, and then being Brazil's under-20 captain this tournament, and as well, there's evidence that it's not just a fluke that him scoring goals on a regular basis from these deep positions, that he can replicate that elsewhere, because he scored, I think it was 3 times in 6 Copinha matches, which is sort of the Sao Paulo Youth Championship for Vasco's youth team. And that's the same tournament where Anthony, obviously now at Manchester United, made a splash a couple of years ago before he got his move from Sao Paulo to Ajax. And it's a really, really prestigious statewide tournament. I think it's something like 120 teams enter it. And obviously Sao Paulo, being the biggest team in the region, tend to do well. But Andrey Santos did very well in the most recent edition of that. How he's used at Chelsea, I think he's probably not going to be thrust in there immediately, but there's immense potential there. And you look at the fee that Enzo Fernández has just moved for, considering that 7-8 months ago he was moving for something like 15 million euros. There's nothing to suggest that Andrey Santos, if he adapts well, and that is the big if he adapts well, that he can't boost his value in the transfer market by a considerable amount, because he does seem to have all of those fundamentals that you want in a player. The only debatable element at the moment is just how he'll adapt to European football.
Yeah, I think you're right. And speaking about Chelsea, I think with the Enzo Fernández deal, what's really interesting about Andrey Santos is that he's almost the perfect partner for Enzo Fernández, in that their skill sets and the way that they play would really match one another well. Enzo Fernández, we saw clearly at the World Cup, and anybody who watched Benfica this season saw a player who really has the ability to create and knit everything together from the middle of the park. But in order to get the most value from him, you have to have dynamic players around him. And Andrey Santos is a dynamic player. He's very modern in that he is that. I'd call him a number 8, but he's more probably a 6-8 hybrid, because defensively he does get back and fill gaps and press and work and shift across really well. But it's in the attacking phase that he really comes to life, and those runs from midfield with power, with pace, with good understanding of how to attack the defence in terms of which pockets and which holes to attack and to break through. I think that with a passer like Enzo beside him, you can really bring out the strengths in both of them. The issue will be, as you say, does he develop and acclimatise to Europe quickly enough? It's interesting, because if I was Chelsea, if I was Benfica, and we were doing the Enzo deal, I think from Benfica and Chelsea's standpoint, I would have been tempted to put a loan of Andrey Santos into that deal as well, to have him go to Portugal for the remainder of the season, just to kind of cushion his entry into European football, if you like, at a level away from the spotlight a little bit more than he is in the Premier League with Chelsea. And Chelsea at the moment are, I think, a difficult club to play for, not just because of the uncertainty around Graham Potter, but around the way that they're playing as well. I don't know how much of Chelsea you've seen recently, Joe, but when you watch them play, they just seem very disjointed
Yeah.
in terms of the decision making that's going on the pitch. And when you're waiting for the passes to be played, and you understand and recognise the patterns that you typically see from a Chelsea side, none of those are there. It's more about an individual game. So for a young player coming in and trying to break into the first team, I think that it will be challenging for him at Chelsea.
No, I agree with you. I think it's Chelsea have they've been very individualist, as you mentioned there, and I suppose it will be difficult considering that Potter is a manager who adapts his tactical style to the opponent rather than being beholden to a particular style of play. And it's especially when a manager's under pressure, it's always easier to play the midfielder who has just cost you the best part of £115 million or however much it was, as opposed to the academy graduate or the young upstart that you've just signed from South America. And you have to imagine as well, that the idea will not be for Andrey Santos to immediately go into this team. So, yeah, I think now that you mentioned the Benfica thing, it probably would have been a good idea if he'd gone there. A good touch point for gauging how well he is going to adapt. So, yeah, missed opportunity, but he's still young enough. He's got plenty of time on his side, especially with those contracts that Chelsea are giving out.